Welcome to our final installation of HR recruitment and retention planning and strategies. So I'm recording in the afternoon instead of the morning, so my hair's all a bit disheveled, but that's okay. So previously we've talked about our recruitment strategies and some of the retention strategies, a big part of it being the onboarding process. Well, today I want to talk about a few more key strategies, and I wanted to start, as usual, with a quote. People work for money, but go the extra mile for recognition, praise, and rewards. Who doesn't like a good thank you? So talent retention. Employee retention is defined as an organization's ability to prevent employee turnover. Increasing retention has a direct impact on business performance and success. So basically, it promotes the health and success of your organization. The time and the stress and cost of training new employees and recruitment at the moment, as everybody knows, it's really, really challenging. So having a great retention strategy is really, really important. It negates the negative impact of people leaving on your business, because that can snowball. That can be one person not being completely happy, they leave, and everybody else thinks, oh my gosh, if they're leaving, maybe I should too. So consider that as part of your process. And you can never buy enough talent to change the culture. I just wanted to put a note there. So bringing in people without actually having a massive impact on the loss of knowledge and process and slowing down the efficiency for a while and the trajectory of the business, it's a big undertaking. So working on culture is probably one of the first and foremost things we can do in order to retain our talent. What is culture? There is a lot out there about what our goals are, what our vision, mission, values, all that sort of stuff are. But culture is actually doing what we do and how we do it. So it's how we do things in this business. So it's interesting when we talked about in the first session about making sure that we are aligning our expectations and making sure we're setting them from the start to say, this is who we are. This is who we want to be. That this is who we are and what we're doing right now. And this is the culture of the business. For example, I might want to be an ethical and sustainable business, and my products have ethical and sustainable packaging that I can trace through a supply chain management system. Someone comes along and they're attracted to that and they want to be employed by that and they want to be a part of it. So they join your team, and that's the expectation we've set from the start. However, in reality, the lived experience of the culture is that we're in a fast-moving manufacturing environment. It's really challenging to keep on top of things. So there's a little bit of pressure. Everybody seems to be under pressure. And we actually haven't sourced the sustainable packaging, and we don't keep a track of those supply chains. So what you've done is you've instantly downgraded that employee and their feelings about the business. And they're like, this isn't what I expected when I started. So it's important to make sure that your lived culture is something that you're promoting and setting expectations on. It's all great to have ambitions, but state that at the interview. This is what we're trying to achieve. Here's how we're trying to do it, but here's where we're at now. You can be a great part of that change. Realistic expectations for people, and to know that they're a part of the change. So another thing on culture, it's really important. Do what you said you would. Management down, everybody. Promote that, foster that, make sure that people are doing what they said they would, because the minute that you don't, you lose trust. And then that just ripples throughout the business, and that loss of trust. So another thing to think about is aligning your business goals with individual goals. So how can I align my team's goals with the business goals? You know, maybe someone within the business has an opportunity or would like to explore an opportunity working in finance. So how can we create that for them? What if an individual's goals is to, I want to save X amount of money to travel overseas? How can we facilitate that? You know, of course, you're going to lose them for a while if they want to travel overseas, but, you know, how can we facilitate that? This is something that we can do to help. Point number 3 on talent retention in culture, making sure that our culture is up to scratch, is hold everyone to the same standard. Decide what your culture is going to be and implement small changes that will enable everyone to be held to the same standard of behaviours and values. Now, you have values within an organisation, but make sure that underneath those values are a set of behaviours that lead to those values or display those values. You know, the values of the business are great. I want to be respectful, but what are the behaviours that demonstrate that I'm being respectful? And this is a great one because we can measure these. You know, it means we can measure the behaviours that lead to lived values. Really important. And there's nothing more demoralizing when, you know, there's a set of expectations around how one person is working, and our culture is, you know, we work with our suppliers and we work with our, you know, we're very accepting and flexible. We worked with our suppliers and our customers to get the best result. And then there's one guy out there who's just stomping on people to get his way through and meet his KPIs. Now, he's the most profitable person, so nobody says a word about how he's getting the results he's getting. There is nothing worse than that. That is the biggest culture killer, is not holding everyone to the same standard. You've got a standard, you've got a set of values that you're living to, and he's not, or he or she is not meeting those, but delivering in every other area. He's exceeding his sales targets, but he's not being held to the same account as everybody else in their behavior or their values. So that's a really important thing to know. Just because they're getting the results they want from the business doesn't mean they can do it the way they, you know, the way that doesn't align with the vision and values of your business. Really, really important to know. So here are a few more points on some talent retention. Here's another strategy. Become results driven. What does that mean? Stop focusing on how people are getting things done within the realms of, you know, making sure that they're still aligning with your behaviors and values within the business. But stop, you know, don't nitpick on how they're getting things done. You know, you should be going through this process and that process. Start looking at the results they're getting. Are they contributing to the team? How are they contributing to the team? Focus on more on what's working and stop what is not working. There is nothing more frustrating for employees in a team that are sitting through an ineffective meeting and it's not working. We're not getting results. No one's changing anything. So stop that meeting. Focus on what is working. Oh, hey, we had these lunches and people are more productive when we work like that. You know what? Let's do more of that. Look at the value that the team member is delivering to the overall business, to your team, to the overall business. Really valuable to highlight where they are in the business and how they're contributing to the performance of the business and what they're doing. Amazing things can be done if you're looking at the value that people are delivering versus, you know, ticking off their KPIs. I know KPIs are really important, but often we overdo it and we list about 15 and they're not key performance indicators. Try and stick to a top 3. You know, make sure you've got your 3 key measurables and measure against the KPIs set out at the start of your onboarding process. You know, include your values-led behaviors. So compensation, let's take the elephant out of the room. If someone is not feeling financially valued within the business, they're immediately going to stop what they're doing. They are not going to contribute. They are not going to be committed 100% to their work. So it's really important that we need to consider, you know, aligning the pays with your business strategy. So what I mean by that is, if your business strategy, if you've got a model that says I'm lean and I've factored in staff turnover because I can only afford to be lean on staff, so I can only afford to pay modern awards, then that's your strategy. If you've decided, you know what, as part of my retention strategy, I'm only going to recruit everybody, the finest people, and I'm going to pay everyone on a starter salary of 70,000 per annum. You know, if you've got the budget to do that, fantastic, because you may think, hey, I might be spending more, but I need less people because more effective work happens. Really important. If your team are asking for increases, take these conversations seriously. I cannot stress enough that if they're asking you, it's not easy. It's not easy to go and ask your boss for a pay rise. So take them seriously. Make sure that we are looking at, you know, the salary in conjunction with everybody else, that we've got some sort of banding structure in place so that we can look at where they're at, you know, how long they've been here, what they're contributing. The other thing to consider is, you know, you can ask them to bring a couple of things to that conversation and say, hey, yeah, I know you want to have a conversation about pay. What I'd like you to do, go out to the market, find a role like yours, you know, bring me that salary, because I think we're paying pretty fairly if you've already got a good process in place, I should say. But also then say, where have you gone above and beyond? Where have you gone above and beyond in your role? Really important. So evaluate the process and ensure that expectations are delivered clearly. If people don't feel valued, they, as I said before, they are not going to commit to you or your business or your goals. So whether it be recognition, reward, or salary, it's really important. And if an increase isn't warranted, don't be afraid to say no. If the criteria doesn't fit, just be clear about the reasons why. You know, fantastic, thank you. I know this is a role similar to yours. However, please appreciate that you are a bit more junior to that role, and therefore, this is why. Or, yeah, I see clearly you went above and beyond here, which is great. And maybe you could work out some sort of, you know, recognition and reward for that part and say, you know what, here's a little coffee voucher, gift voucher. I don't know how you'd like to play that, but that's, you know, part of a nice reward program. But in your actual day-to-day role, you're only really getting 70% of it right. You still need to work on this. And that's why I'm not awarding you a salary increase. So can you see the difference? If someone's going above and beyond on something that's either outside of their role, or if they're going on above and beyond regularly, but they're still not meeting certain tasks, we need to start our performance management process, which we'll be talking about next month. We need to be talking about that process and making sure that that's clear to them. So if it's not warranted, don't say yes to a pay increase. This is really important. This is probably the most important thing in talent retention, is being clear about that. You know, it's not just giving everyone willy-nilly a pay increase because they asked for it. It's about really doing the research and understanding the needs behind your business and being okay to say no. Learning and development. This is awesome. Learning and development, pathways for career progression, sideline projects, variety to the day-to-day jobs, problem solving, and, you know, creates an increased level of engagement. So for example, offering a learning or a sideline project, for example, if you've got someone who's in a day-to-day role that can be a little bit mundane, and you've spoken to them about where they'd like to be, how they'd like to be in the, you know, professionally, where they'd like to go, doesn't necessarily mean you can offer it to them, but maybe you can offer a learning pathway to that and say, absolutely happy to let you take a chunk of time out of your week to do that learning. Decide how much time you want the team to dedicate to training or a sideline project pathway, and give them that time. Make sure, you know, there's nothing worth if someone's really overworked, they are not going to want to do any training, they're not going to want to take anything else on. So it's important you get your foundation and your resource planning right first, and then you can allow some learning and development or some sideline projects. So a sideline project within a business rather than a learning plan might be, hey, we've got this new system coming on board? Would you like to be involved in the committee, in the steering committee, or would you like to be involved in the project team? That's a sideline project. Set away how much time it's going to take them out of their day-to-day, and set that might be enough experience for them to make them feel that they've contributed. Another key idea is when you're getting feedback, if you've put out a survey and you're getting some feedback, make sure that people can be part of that problem solving themselves. So ask for problems, create that open communication so that people can contribute to solving the problems. I mean, that's another sideline project that they could be working on. So offer a learning management system that allows people to learn skills that will help them to grow. It's fantastic. But people who are stretched with time will not have the mental capacity to focus on training. So you've got to take that into account. Communication. When you have an open and healthy line of communication, you make employee retention so much easier. So employees should feel like they can come to you with any and all ideas, questions, and concerns. They are expecting you to be open and honest with them about what's going on in the company and their own performance. When management hides or doesn't communicate well, it feels like, oh, I'm being excluded and I'm not a part of the business. Be clear about what role they play in the business and how they are contributing to the growth of the business. For example, someone in an admin role may not necessarily see their value within the business. Communicate to them what that is. I couldn't get my job done without you really going above and beyond in your administrative role. I really appreciate what you do. You know, I wouldn't be able to get things organized. I wouldn't be able to get as much done myself, and I wouldn't be able to put these HR retention strategies in place. So make sure you're communicating to them on a regular basis about where the business is at and what's going on. There's nothing worse than not knowing what's going on within the business. It creates a fear. Internal communication enables you to equip your employees to feel valued, satisfied, and motivated, which boosts morale. So you can strengthen your relationships with current employees, but top candidates will also be attracted by such an open company culture that values communication. Feedback. Act quickly. If you've asked for feedback as a manager, act quickly and take it seriously and show people that you're willing to act. Try and get feedback. If you've got something going on within the office, a new design, a new marketing strategy, create a platform where everyone can have a voice on that. You know, make people feel involved. Bring them in. They're going to love it. You'll find that you'll engage people more better. You'll find that you'll engage people way more. So how do we adopt these strategies? We'll decide on the priorities, measure improvements, and talk about them regularly. So make them a part of the conversation. So thank you for listening to today's session on strategies. And if you need some more information, reach out, comment below. And if you're looking forward to next month's session on performance management, it all ties together. I love how it all intertwines. So it's been fabulous. I hope you've enjoyed this month's series. Thank you.